Did you hear from her? Good evening. We do have a member of the Minister Alliance with us this evening. Pastor Pete, would you please come forward and pray?
Father, we just want to thank you for another day that you've given us. We want to thank you for this meeting and the things that, they desire to accomplish. We thank you for all here and their, the part that they play in our town. And we do pray that you will bless, the decisions that have to be made tonight in the business. We think about, our protection in the town. We think about our construction, our business, our schools getting cranked up this week, and the kids are all involved there, and buses and parents and rides and new business opening up. And we just desire your blessing on our town and just do great things in our midst. And I do thank you for these who work to lead us in the way that would be helpful for the whole community, and just thank you for them and bless them and their families also. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I now call the August 19th, 2024 Board of Alderwomen meeting to order. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Pam Pope.
Here.
Sierra McMichael. Here. Rachel Kilmer.
Here.
Tracy Newcomer.
Here.
Kelly Netto. And Mayor Dana Webb.
Here, thank you. The next item on the agenda is new business deletions or continuances. We do not have any of those this evening, so we will move on to public comments. City Clerk, do we have any this evening?
There are none.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a consent agenda. These items are considered on the consent agenda so that members of the Board of Alderwomen, by unanimous consent, can designate routine items to be approved by one motion. Tonight, we have approval of the August 5th, 2024 Board of Alderwomen meeting minutes, expenditures through August 15th, 2024, and the July 2024 financial statement.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business. We do not have any unfinished business tonight, so we will move on to new business. The first item for new business is discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding the mayoral appointment of Megan Woodward to the Park Board. Megan is with us tonight. She's sitting back there. Raise your hand up, Megan. She came tonight, brought her kids. We had Jennifer resigned. She moved out of Oak Grove, so she resigned from the Park Board. Megan came highly recommended from one of our Board of Alderwomen, and I called her, and it was quite a pleasant call. As you know, when you, as a mayor, you appoint people to boards or commissions, sometimes it can be hard. You almost feel like you're doing a full sales pitch, but I didn't even get to finish my sales pitch, and Megan said yes. So thank you for wanting to serve the city of Oak Grove on the Park Board. So I'm looking for a motion to approve that. Maybe I gave you a sales pitch right now.
I'll make a motion to approve Megan Woodward to the Park Board. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Megan Woodward to the Park Board. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, you're on the Park Board. Yes. If you want to, you can leave at this time. Our next thing, I mean, you could stay, but we're going to do some presentation of codes. So you can leave at any time if you get bored, but congratulations. The next item on the agenda is a presentation regarding the proposed amendments to the Chapter 500 building codes for the city of Oak Grove. Justin, you're up again.
Thank you, Mayor. So as we go through this process, as we go through this process, I guess one of the good things about taking our time with this is we catch our mistakes and maybe some omissions. Do you guys have any, I guess, questions so far as to where we're at with codes and what I've proposed?
Are we just general code questions right now? Is that acceptable? Is that
Okay.
a conversation topic? Yes? Okay. I guess this is all like kind of outside of my wheelhouse. This is all new to me. I'm learning. I wondered, who all is on the code enforcement staff? Like, what's your workflow? Is this, like, I don't know. This is a really big question because this is obviously I have a whole staff doing this full time, but in like kind of high level layman terms, could you just explain to me how it all works, basically, you know? And especially I'm interested in the construction side because it seems like that's what we've been focusing a lot on throughout this.
Right.
How many times are you guys out there throughout the process? What's the builder's accountability of having to come to us for things? Like, I think, I don't know, I assume a lot of people don't know what that actually looks like. So I was just, as I was going back through everything, I was like, let's get really high level and just, I want to understand it better.
So there's myself as a building official, and then we've got Maureen, who's, you know, part-time codes, but mostly she's on the animal control side. With what I've got going on, she's picked up some substantial responsibility. And I've kind of, you know, I went and trained Maureen and Emily as well on the code side to do inspections. Because, you know, like I said, there was a lot of times that I was absent and, you know, just couldn't get out there. So there's myself, Maureen, and Emily on the building side, the code side. As far as our workflow goes, that cost of service, is it on? Okay. Well, I've worked out an actual sheet on what it takes as far as inspection and time and all that good stuff, which I could provide you. It actually took me a little time to do, so
Yeah.
if you want it, I can give it to you. But, you know, you're looking at, you know, total, you know, of course, every house is different, every project's different, but, you know, you're looking at a house, whenever you do inspections, you're looking at probably about anywhere between 12 hours and 15 hours worth of
Wow.
time.
Okay.
So, yeah. And then we've got the building packet that we hand out, you know, for all of the builders.
Okay.
In that has got, you know, all the permits, business license, site plan requirements. Let's see what else we got in here. We got the fee schedule in here. Also, every year I try to, you know, if there's anything new or if we're going to focus on certain particular things, I do send out the builders a letter every year, just kind of letting them know, giving them a heads up. You know, hey, we're going to be kind of looking at this a little harder this year, and that erosion control is on there for this year. But it's also got the inspections and what we require and how we require them. I've got in there, I believe this was on the OneDrive, right? Okay. So you guys can actually look at that on the OneDrive, and it's on our website as well. But I do also, I've added the mid-roofs on here for next year.
Okay.
And that, you know, as we talked, we're just going to require the pics on those.
Okay.
So,
That's good.
let's see, what else can I tell you?
I guess I'm curious how you're balancing this amount of workload. Because I just did the math, and so if we have 100 houses and it takes 15 hours a house, you know, that's 37 and a half 40-hour work weeks. So it's like more than half of your year in hours spent on just inspections. And then we're sitting here like, let's add a mid-roof inspection and let's add this. So I don't know, I just want to like balance reality with like our ideal, you know, I don't know, what's your like, in your dream world, what would this look like for you? Because you're the one that's in this every day and trying to divide yourself 87 different ways. with it, you have so much more on your plate than just literally inspections, right? Like,
Yeah, I wear many hats. yes.
yeah.
I like I said, I mean, the girls, I give them a lot of credit. They've helped me immensely.
Okay.
If I didn't have them helping me, I'd be drowning.
Okay.
So, and that, as we grow, that's initially how we, with Emily, we hired her part-time at first. We've moved her up to full-time now, so, like I said, as we grow, she's gonna get more responsibility, so.
Sure.
But, between the girls, Corey and Matt helping a lot.
They help with the
you know,
inspections too?
oh, yeah. Well, no, they don't do the
Oh,
inspections.
okay.
Only Justin would be
Okay.
qualified to do the
Yeah.
inspections, or contract out to IBT.
Yeah, IBTS.
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 So Emily and Maureen, are they allowed to do the actual inspections? They are, okay, okay.
Yeah.
We utilize Maureen and Emily because they're property code enforcement, so they're kind of in the same vein. They also do some building
Okay.
inspections. So not all of them.
Right.
But
Okay.
some building inspections will utilize them to go out and visually inspect to make sure that what's being done
Okay.
to our code. And then, if it's a particularly busy week, or we have a lot of inspections that one person can't handle, many years ago, the board approved a contract with IBTS. And so we'll also use IBTS for those particular weeks where one person wouldn't be able to do it. So on occasions, we'll call in inspections for
Okay.
IBTS to come perform.
And do you-
Now, primarily, we use IBTS for commercial
Okay.
plan review and commercial inspections, as well as multifamily inspections. But we do, on occasion, use them for single-family inspections.
Okay. And is Justin empowered just to look at his week and be like, hey, we need their help this week, or is there like some process you have to go through for that? You just, whenever you're just are slammed, you can reach out. Okay, that's good.
Good.
Thank you for that. It's really helpful me to like get my
Yeah.
grasp on like what extra work are we putting on your plate here? So.
Well, I mean, that
Yeah.
department's growing rapidly. I mean,
Yeah.
from, like you said, part-time Emily to full-time, which before it was just the one person, Maureen kind of did, just
Yeah.
a minimal part. And so with I'm not speaking for her, but just now sitting here thinking about it, reflecting on what she's saying, as our town growing and, building keeps increasing, I guess just being sensitive to the fact, do we have enough people in that department? Or does IBTS help us enough to keep moving at the flow we need to?
Well, especially if we're going to continue to add more inspections and checks
Yeah.
for you guys, so.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
and I will say too, the board was, you guys were very, thoughtful, and I appreciate the questions, because in the past, you guys have helped with, additional staff, improving the IPTS contract, and one of those was in the city clerk's office and customer service, which is our permit tech
Yeah.
position. So,
Yeah, that
Don't
helps
wanna forget
too.
Mackenzie.
we have the deputy city clerk, that assists city clerk in functions, but also does business licenses. And then we have the Angela, who's our water clerk. She also does customer service calls generally into the city. And then we have Mackenzie, who does customer service calls, helps with water payments as they come in if Angela's busy with another customer, but also as our permit tech. So as builders come in, or residents, if they have a question about, say, like a fence permit, they sometimes will call Justin or email, but oftentimes the first point of contact would be the permit tech. And she will help guide people on the right permit to get, how to fill it out, if they even need a permit, for instance. Sometimes they don't. And then she'll work with them on getting the materials, then for Justin to review. So she helps with a lot of some of those interactions and phone time and emails. And also then as builders call in inspections, if it's, say, commercial or multifamily, she'll take the inspections that they're calling in for the next day, and then she will coordinate with IBTS those inspection
Oh,
schedules.
perfect. That's awesome.
Very good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
You'll let us know, or you'll let the board know if the workload becomes too much, or if there needs to be additional staff in that
Yeah.
department, correct?
Right, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And and just to Justice's credit, there's certainly busy times in the building
Yeah.
season, so there's times where a lot of effort has to get spent out in the field, and then there's other times where it's slower, and so there can be more work in the office. Reviewing codes like this was a good off-season sort of
Yeah.
thing to tackle. But it does ebb and flow, and that's one of the reasons that I think the city went to IBTS is because, their costs correlate with the number of permits that we have. So we have
Right.
more permits come in, we have just that. And then we also have to outsource inspections, and so we have increased expenditures. But then if we have this recession or we have slower inspections or a few number of permits, then we won't have to utilize IBTS.
Right. And then we're not paying a salary that we don't
Right.
have work for
And
someone.
so
Makes
they-
sense.
that's a
Yeah.
good buffer, but yes, at some point, if the city continues to grow and if our building permits continue to exceed, we may need to look at other options.
Yeah, that's just what struck me as looking back at all this. Like, okay, so every year we just add more stuff and more requirements, and it's like going to continue to grow. The other question I had as I was looking at this kind of high level is if we could look at like all of the building parameters in terms of, I know we've had a lot of several builders come to us trying to build houses on the small, weird city lots. So like setbacks, lot size, all of that stuff. I didn't know if this is within the realm of the code conversation to look at that and see where we are with those are compared to cities around us, or when the last time we even looked at them was, and what, I mean, because I feel like this pretty much is all encompassing for new construction other than zoning, which we've kind of addressed already, and then lot sizes and setbacks.
Yeah, so that would be a sort of a separate conversation that the board would have on the city's zoning regulations.
Okay.
So if we want, if the board wants to add another zoning, right now we have R1, R2, R3. And so there's the R1 minimums. There is, if a parcel currently already exists and is in R1, then say, for instance, our minimum is 10,000 square feet. If they're not meeting 10,000 because they're an existing parcel, then they're allowed to build. But you couldn't make a lot smaller than 10,000 because it wouldn't meet the minimum R1 requirements.
So when we've had the builder coming building the little houses on the little lots, remind me, what was the issue there? Because it was an existing lot, right? Or no?
Right.
Or wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. So there is, so in that one, they would then need to meet the setbacks.
Okay.
Yep.
So you would still need to, there is in our code for, and this is related to areas of town that are older, where if on the same block of the same zoning use, you can average the front setbacks. So say you're building an older part of town and all the houses there are 10 feet back, you could then build 10 feet back.
Got it. Okay.
That only applies in areas where you could average the front setbacks that were built at a time when the setbacks were at a different code. And the intent there is that you wouldn't have a bunch of houses 10 feet back and the one house that's 25, and that would look.
Sure.
So there is a way on the front setbacks to do that, but there is not changes for side or rear setbacks.
Okay.
Now, if in our code, if there is a particularly unique parcel that's different than others, odd shape or some other thing, there would be a process to request for a variance.
Okay.
But those are very specific requirements under state statute that you'd have to meet.
Okay.
And it wouldn't apply to a lot that, say, is 9,000 square feet and it's a square and is very similar to other, and somebody wants to be able to build a house and not meet side setbacks. That generally wouldn't meet a variance.
Right.
But that would go to the Board of Zoning Adjustment, and they would make that determination.
Okay.
And that doesn't go to anywhere else. It doesn't go to Planning Commission or back to this board. It's a separate
Just that.
board, and then if, after that, it would go to
Okay.
circuit court to, if somebody were to appeal. So there is a process for a variance, but that's not probably exactly what you're asking about.
Yeah.
You're probably looking more like if a separate zoning overlay district for small
Lot sizes.
lot sizes or historic neighborhood or something.
It just seems like there's like this big book of 2012 for every other kind of code. So I didn't know if there was like this is the like standard for this aspect of building, or if that's truly just kind of a free-for-all city to city.
It's kind of city to city, what the city, so I don't know how long Oak Grove's had the 9,000 square foot for a lot, but, I mean, I actually had some notes on that. Like Blue Springs has, their lot size is 6,000. Green Valley, Odessa's 8,000. Ours is extremely big. How long has ours been at 9,000? For years? Was that back?
No, I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look. But
I think it was
probably
back in
been- it's probably been
19
20 years.
Yeah, it was back when they were trying to slow down the growth of Oak Grove, I think is when they made the lot sizes bigger, because they were trying to slow down the growth. Yeah.
I guess this is a different conversation than code. I was
Yeah.
thinking it was kind of the same thing as like, here's the magical book that you agree with or don't agree with. So I was thinking we could and lump it into this conversation. But if it's a separate thing, then I just would say if we can look at that sometime, I think that would be interesting to know. where we land relative. But if it's like a whole rezoning and a big thing, then I'm not trying to open a big can of worms. I just was curious.
Yeah, well, it would be
It would
a
be
fairly
rezoning, yeah.
substantial
Yeah.
thing. That would be under the Unified Development Code, so you'd have to look at the UDC and zoning requirements, and then since there's not currently, say we were, the board says we want to make R4 or some new thing.
Yeah.
Well, there isn't any R4 zoning because it's brand new and everything else already currently has a zoning district. So then the city would then either have to just sit back and wait for individual parcels to request rezoning, but then you can get into spot zoning, so you probably then would need to rezone the areas of town you think are appropriate for your new R4
Interesting.
district.
Okay.
You then, each property owner would need to be notified that their property's up for rezoning, you'd hold public hearings, and it.
Okay,
there
so it's
would
not
be-
as simple as, oh, a 12-inch drive-in doesn't make sense, let's make it 6. Like, that's what I
Right,
was-
yeah, and so that's and then, so
Okay.
this is really for, then once you have your zoning district and your proper use in that zoning district and any particular requirements, then you come in and you want to build something new, these codes would apply.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not it's on a smaller lot or larger lot, it's the same codes.
Got it.
The one thing that the book that is added, that we're proposing to add in the 2018s here is the International Existing Code, which would be for existing buildings. So it's for those situations where new construction wouldn't fit. So if you had an old historic downtown building, let's say, and you were doing a sizable renovation to it, the new construction requirements might not necessarily fit with
Right.
what your building structure is. So then you could go into the existing, International Existing Code, which gives a little bit more variety and variabilities to existing structures.
So if you're like remodeling that's true in single-family homes too. If you're remodeling a old historic residential home, they can fall back on the
Right,
existing.
right. If
Okay.
there's some, if their walls are too small, or whatever it might be that would require substantial redoing of their building, that would then at that point be, not feasible financially or even structurally. You might say, hey, that you couldn't even possibly meet this new code if you wanted to because of the way your house is structured or building is structured, the existing code. So there's an option for that for the older neighborhoods, but that would be existing structures, nothing new. Anything new would fall under the new residential or new commercial.
Got it.
But just, if there is an older house or old downtown buildings that, they could use the new existing code, the International Existing Building Code for some of those remodels.
Okay.
But to your first question, that would be a separate process to.
Okay.
Would
add all-
ADU fall underneath that separate process as well? Or would that be a additional?
Yeah, so like that's an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah,
So
accessory
so
dwelling unit.
Like for.
You guys know what those are?
Yeah, but what is the code here? We can't have.
We don't have it.
Okay.
Right, so that would be allowing a separate house, mini house.
Like a mother-in-law quarters or whatever.
Yeah.
Right, in the rear of your property, yeah.
That would be with the first question that Rachel's talking about too,
Yes.
yeah. Oh, AUD is interesting and could be interesting to discuss at some point because it keeps families together. It keeps people in our town. They can take a garage that's up over their house and turn it into a mother-in-law's quarter or something. And so,
Your nephew or something.
Right.
Gotta stay with you a while.
yeah, something. So, I mean, I know it's happening in in Kansas City and possibly moving this way, but I'm just curious about it.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Those were just the things I was chewing on as I was going back over everything. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sounds like maybe the board has an appetite for some future meeting date to discuss our current zoning.
What do you guys think?
Have that,
I think it's always worth to have a conversation. I mean, we could say it's great and fine and move on,
Yeah. Do you want to do that as a meeting like this or a workshop or something maybe?
yeah, we could discuss either one.
Just do like a workshop before a meeting, just like a little bit before a meeting, come at 6 or
about it.
something and do a workshop or do it after or something, or a different night if it'll work for everybody. It's,
Yeah.
since you brought it up, and if you guys are all interested, it's at least worth talking about and discussing.
Well, I want to understand it better at a bare
Yeah.
minimum. Like, yeah.
But thanks, because I had some of the same questions written down, the ADU, and then I wanted to know if this fell under some of the business parking requirements, of businesses, but obviously that wouldn't. I mean, you have to inspect those things, but it falls completely under a different type of a code.
Correct, yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's under.
Thank
the
you.
Just general development. You
Yeah.
then get into, if it's multifamily, you've got the special use standards for that. If it's commercial, our code has a table that, based on its use, and sometimes it's square foot, sometimes it's number of dining spaces, there's other, you have then a number of required parking spaces. So it's a, our table is quite long, but it essentially boils down to a math problem, which is
Right.
you have this times that equals you got to have 80 parking spaces. There is in our code for, and I forget the exact streets, but it basically encompasses downtown, where in our code, if you're in that downtown corridor, you're exempt from having to have the same parking requirements as if you were located somewhere else.
Interesting.
So if somebody's in a downtown building and they don't have an area to do a parking lot, they wouldn't be required to have some of the same. So there is some variability depending on the age of the town and what was required at the time those buildings went in.
And those can be talked about and changed, right, if the board approves it?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
because out of all honesty, I've never really understood why you have to have, possibly 60 parking spaces at some brand-new business. Like, why do we really care? I mean, they could put that money into their business, and then their business would prosper, and the 60 spaces are not always used, but that's just my thought on it, so. Because we've had that happen. We've ran into that trouble with lot sizes for new businesses.
Yeah, and yes,
They've had to squeeze them in.
Yeah, there are like I said, it is a lengthy table, but it doesn't always work for every type of business. I mean, sometimes there's a business that doesn't perfectly align within the code. One of
Right.
the probably most common pieces of feedback we get from businesses is the number of parking spaces.
That they have to have, that they're
are
required to have.
required.
Yeah,
And they're not many, but there are some businesses that are so unique within our code, it says there's not a specific requirement, but if the business can show that whatever they might do wouldn't generate very much traffic or very many parking requirements, then they can ask if they could show that, hey, I don't need 100 spaces, my business only has 10, so could
Yeah.
I get away with, would 15 be appropriate? There's some of that, but primarily there's not much flexibility because it is a math problem. So that is one of the things that we get most questions and feedback from businesses is the number of parking space requirements.
Well, if we're gonna have a little workshop, I'd like to look at that too, and any other
Absolutely.
piece of code that causes headaches for you guys. I think since
that,
we're in
that,
this,
that you can change. that
Yeah.
You as a board can change.
let's, might as well, since we're in the weeds on this.
Yeah,
There's nothing that jumps to my head, top of head of like an issue that, you guys would run into it more than us in terms of businesses trying to apply for permits and, all that stuff, but might as well take a, whatever.
And I apologize, Mayor, I think I had a lengthy answer, but did you have other items you?
no, really the parking thing, I've had questions about that as well, but, I mean, I'm thrilled that the ladies are interested in, one, wanting to make sure the staff has enough support, and then two, wanting to see our town succeed in housing and then businesses. And so I know it would involve another night and a workshop or more hours, but it's what we're here for, to serve and to do things better for our town. So thank you, ladies. I'm very proud of you for wanting to do that. And this has been, we're not done tonight. We haven't even started, but it's just been incredible discussion, really. It's really good. So, go ahead. I think I'm going to interrupt somebody. Go ahead,
I wanted
Pam.
to throw something out.
Yeah,
about the
please do.
part-timers. I understand the math problem. What doesn't always make sense is that sometimes they don't take into consideration what kind of vehicles are in a town like ours versus what kind of vehicles are in downtown Kansas City regarding the size of the parking space. So I know myself, I'm very frustrated trying to park in Blue Springs in my husband's truck in a spot that is far too narrow. And so, anyway, if we're going to look at that, then I would like to.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's in the code, our code does have the minimum sizes of your lot, of the parking space. It also then changes based on the angle. So if it's, 90-degree perpendicular, it's one thing, but if it's angled, it's another, because you gotta have certain spaces, enough space to back out, if it's one way or multi. So it is in the code, but again, I think it has been many years since this code has been looked at, and certainly car sizes have increased in that time.
absolutely.
And, when our code has a requirement for a number of parking spaces, they typically go with the smaller parking
Right,
space,
sure.
because they can then get more into the code, and then
And then you can't park.
people,
Yeah.
you end up in a way sometimes with less, because
Right.
then large trucks park
Right.
sometimes over the line,
Yeah.
and then nobody can park in the middle one, and you end up maybe with fewer usable spaces than you would if you.
That happens all the time here.
Yeah. I would
Yeah.
rather
Yeah,
us talk about these things and get out ahead of them before we have these businesses coming in, and we want to be pro-business friendly city, for businesses to come into our town.
And pro-builder friendly and
pro-builder
pro-remodel
friendly.
friendly and, yeah.
And we want to do things slow and sustainable, but we don't want to wait till it's too late and then we have all these hurried meetings. So, yeah, if you can do that, that'd be great.
Is there a way you keep track of the complaints? Like, I think it'd be nice to see like how often something comes up, or like even builders coming in and saying, why is this in there? That's an issue for us. Like, it'd be nice to know how many times. Like, I know at my work, the IT help desk, we like submit our thing through that, and then it keeps track of all of the issues and it gets organized by whatever the issue. I don't know if that's something you guys do, or if you just solve the problem right then and there when someone asks a question, or if there's a way to like keep track of like how many times. I don't know, that would make me be like, oh, that one's like 5 people have asked about the same thing, and we haven't done anything or talked about it. I don't
Matt
know.
probably knows them off the top of his head.
He probably does, yeah.
I think our office is probably small enough that we can sit and powwow and kind of come up with a list of common questions that we get.
Yeah.
You know, most of the times we get phone calls. We do, you know, occasionally get emails, but a lot of times people, particularly if they have a question about how the code works, they want to call in. And so, you know, we don't have a process to say, okay, well, this person called about that, this,
Yeah.
you know, but that. But it is,
Right.
you know, it
At least if you hear it
Parking
more
for
than
sure
once,
is-
maybe or note it in a
is one of
document.
them, and you know, I think that even though we have, compared to other cities, we have relatively few zoning districts, you know, R1, R2, R3, C2, C3, and 1 and 2.
Right.
We get a lot of questions about how zoning works, and you know, we have our GIS map on our website that people can look to see what parcel is zoned what. You know, if you go to our online code, you can look at the use table and see what use is permitted or not permitted per zoning, but it is a process. So I think we just get a lot of times a lot of questions of
Generic.
what can or can't I do on a particular parcel, and you know, sometimes that's handled by customer service, so they get the call and they can look it up, or Justin does, or I do, and we try to, as best we can, point people in the right direction of what they can do, because we don't want anybody opening a business or going down a route that is not an acceptable use in that zoning district.
So I have a question about that. So I had someone in my ward ask me about opening a business here and how it was zoned. How it was zoned for, it was C1 or 2, whatever, it didn't work with the business they wanted to open. Is there like we have, you know, people can appeal things with residential stuff. Can people appeal things on the business side? Like if their type of business they want to open doesn't meet code in that area, does that mean that we can make an exception for one person? And is there like a process for them to file for that? Or does that mean you have to rezone that whole, you know,
Yeah.
redo the whole zoning?
Right, so there's there would be a process if they believed that the interpretation of the code was wrong. So if they said, well, my business is this, and staff believes it meets this definition, they could do that. But the use table is black and white.
It's
So
set in stone, yeah.
It's,
Yeah,
right,
okay.
it's, you know, fast food restaurant is permitted in certain districts and not permitted in others.
Right.
Now, there are an occasion where in previous councils or boards have, when they approve the use table, there are certain things they may thought, well, this might work in some C1, but not in all C1. So let's make it a permitted use, a conditional use.
Oh, okay, so
Conditional
that's
use
where the
permit,
conditional use
yeah.
comes in. Okay,
So
makes sense.
you might say, yeah, that doesn't work for all C1, but if it's a C1 that's next to M1 and is away from residential, or there are certain things of the property that might make it work, then that's when they come in and ask for a conditional use permit. And then
Okay.
you as a board say, okay, yeah, this is one of those cases where, yes, this does work, but we still want you to put up a larger fence, or we want to look at the hours that you're operating, or the light output of your business, because you're gonna have a lot of lights, and there's nearby residents, we don't like, so there's
Got it.
a way that if it's in between, it's not really, they're not really, you know, asking for you know, but it is, there is a process of conditional use permit.
Got it.
But they're
Okay.
not, you know, trying to appeal the decision or something.
Right.
And that's what the comp plan is.
Yeah.
It shows you the zoning, and so every 10 years or so, sometimes that has changed. I mean, if you look around the city, there's been zoning changed over 10, 20 years in different areas.
Yeah, and occasionally then the board has updated the definitions as well as the use table. So, you know, most recently when the state law changed and recreational marijuana was added to state statute, it's constitutional we had to add our use table to add that. So on occasion, the board has added more specific definitions of that use table. Otherwise, you fall under the more general definition. So if you're an undefined, if you're a business that's not specifically defined on the use table, you just fall under general business, just retail service, but if you're more specifically defined, then the board has come up with the best use, probably on staff recommendation or what other cities do, but on permitted, not permitted, or of conditional use. So you could certainly, the board can look at that section too and say, you know what, maybe this type of business should be allowed in this district, or maybe it was, but that's a process the board could also do, is looking at the use table as well as the zoning districts, because they go hand in hand.
I think if we're gonna have a meeting about it, we
Yeah.
might as well.
Yeah, you've got me pretty excited about it now, so thanks for the teaser of it all. Thanks for your patience, Justin, while we work through those
Oh, no, that's-
questions.
that's-
We didn't even answer your question. Do we have any questions about what you've been talking about? One thing, we want to make sure that dryer vent thing got taken care of, which I'm pretty sure it did.
Yeah, that
Oh, were you
was-
guys done with that part?
Yes.
That was
Everybody,
it.
ladies?
Yeah.
Excuse me, okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Justin.
No, I was just gonna answer, that the picture itself made it,
Yeah,
deceptive, so, that's where I messed up. That's where I didn't interpret it right.
it's okay.
That happens from time
It does, yeah.
So, but does anybody have any other questions or concerns about, I guess, where we're at?
I have a question on the, what is this page? Oh, it's required inspections page, but it talks about sidewalks, and I don't understand it. So I was hoping you could help me understand it. It says the sidewalk shall be placed 5 foot from the back of the curb. What, is that the front of the sidewalk, the back of the sidewalk? That's a long ways, so I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
And then just because I don't know what it means, what is a 2% cross slope? It says sidewalks running through driveways will maintain no more than 2% cross slope.
Well, and that 2%'s an ADA
Okay.
requirement.
So that's
It,
no more than a,
yeah.
okay.
So that's if you're walking down a sidewalk, it's this one.
Okay, got it.
So a sidewalk can go, if you're walking on it, you can go uphill or downhill, but you shouldn't slant when you're walking, more than 2%. And so if you go around and look at new builds, if they have a sidewalk, a lot of times the approach apron on the driveway will be flatter, because that's where the sidewalk goes. And then further up, the next block, the driveway is steeper. But then on the side where there's not sidewalks, that driveway may be graded the same all the way up to the garage. But they have to come down, and then for ADA reasons, you can't be more than 2% on that cross slope. And the 5 feet off the back of curb is really just a bit of a best practice for our areas where you have the typical R1.
So it's the far edge of the sidewalk is 5 feet from the, am I not making any sense? The curb, there's the curb, and then there's the grass in between, and then are we talking about, it's 5 feet over here, or does it have, are we looking at 5 feet of grass and then the sidewalk?
Yeah, typically 4 or 5 to 5 feet of grass is.
So that, that eats up a lot of yard to me in my thoughts. Because I'm not accustomed.
Which packet are you in?
I am in, City of Oak Grove required inspections,
Got it, okay,
down at the sidewalk section.
all right.
It caught my eye because in the subdivision where I live, it's a problem right now, sidewalks. The driveways are so short that the cars are blocking
Oh,
the
yes.
sidewalks.
You
as
see
they're
that
parked. And
in
so
the-
this seems to me to be even further back than what we're dealing with over there. And so it's eating into a lot of
Yeah.
driveway space.
It does make it very difficult when, especially in the older part of town, like you're talking about, the sidewalk really doesn't serve a purpose because people they park. You have to go all the way around them, like Pam's saying. Go ahead, what were you going to say about it?
So this is a tricky one, right? The sidewalk is in public right-of-way, right? So that
Right.
you're not supposed to be blocking
Correct.
the street if you can park, do street parking, but you're not supposed to be sticking out of your driveway into the street. Kind of same concept for sidewalks. You're
Yeah,
supposed
your
to.
car's not supposed to block
You're supposed
the
to
sidewalk.
leave that open or leave.
And how are you gonna enforce
a-
that?
A path for someone to
Yeah.
walk around. By and large, it's one of those things where we encourage folks to be neighborly, right? That walkers should watch out for cars, and cars should be cognizant of pedestrians that may use the sidewalks or wheelchairs or strollers. The part of the reason that we have in here the 5 feet requirement is that when new subdivisions come in, when a new house is built, the builder of the house puts in the sidewalk.
Right.
And if you just let them put them anywhere between back of curb and end of right-of-way, your sidewalks wouldn't line up when two houses get built. So by telling everyone they have to put it at 5 feet, you make sure that when one person builds a house and then 2 years later their neighbor builds a house, they're connected. Because you might have an instance where one house gets built, then there's 3 vacant lots, then another house. And so you want to make sure those sidewalks over time get built at the same distance.
Is 5-foot standard for most cities because of our setbacks being,
Yeah, they're usually
It's
4
pretty-
to
okay.
5, because you want to leave, you want to have enough room that the grass can live and, have space for, if utilities want to go through there as well. They don't have to tear up the sidewalks to get to utilities. One of the things that, Pam, to your point, is in areas of town where the setback is less than the standard R1, that
Is
5
now.
feet, 4 or 5 feet really eats into the usable space between the sidewalk and the garage. And in some instance, then that leaves really not even enough room to have a car
Right.
without by default blocking the sidewalk.
yeah,
And in particular, that in some neighborhoods, HOA is not allowed for their residents to park on the street. That's part of the HOA requirement. So if
Right.
you can't park on the street, you can't, your own driveway blocks the sidewalk, what are you left with? So that particular subdivision is White Oaks, and they have phases coming up. And so one of the things that we're going to work with the developer on, and really they were going to be working with the home builders, is getting them to put the sidewalks further down, closer to the curb, to leave more space for parking.
I'm just having a hard time envisioning, I mean, is there somewhere in town now that there's 5 feet between the curb and the side, where the sidewalk starts? I'm having a hard time envisioning, so just, maybe I need to look at it. I need to see it, because it's, 5 feet is a long
well,
ways.
it'd be
So your
Oaks
average,
of Edgewood,
your average mower is 60 inches, 5 feet.
Yeah.
So that's one mower path, if you want to look at it that way, a rider mower.
yeah.
Yeah,
But now you're correct, on the older part of town, like where I live in that area, those are not 5 feet back.
no.
But Oaks of Edgewood, those
They-
would be.
They are.
But-
It's 5 feet?
Yeah, but over here, no, none of those really
It's
are.
It's the width of a bathtub in my brain, so that's a lot of space.
And,
So-
but
So-
another reason for that requirement is in newer subdivisions, with the storm boxes, it's best if the storm boxes are not part of the sidewalk, because over time, the storm box typically doesn't move as much as the sidewalk moves.
Okay.
And so then you're left with, if the storm box goes halfway or partly into the sidewalk, and the sidewalk slowly sinks over time, you now have an issue, because it caused an issue. So part of the reason to have 4 to 5 feet back is that's typically the size of a storm box lid that's set back from the curb. That way your storm box lid is not going to be incorporated as part of the sidewalk.
Oh, well, that makes sense. That's what the older sidewalks have. They have the storm
And it's
box
like-
lid that's,
yeah.
yeah, and then you go over it. And
Now,
it's
and-
dropped,
and-
like you said.
Right, and this is, one of the things that, if it's a new house in an older neighborhood, what we're gonna wanna see is that the sidewalks connect with the nearby. So we're not
Right.
necessarily gonna say, no, it's gotta be 5 feet, even though your neighbors are at 3 feet, right?
Yeah.
The goal is that the sidewalks line up properly, and that you don't have one house who has to then build additional sidewalk because their neighbor put it at a different depth. But maybe we could certainly look at whether or not to change that, but I think the idea was that we want, one, to get out of the storm box issue.
So remind me how deep the storm box is?
So it would be 4 to 5 feet. And it depends on, because you set back the storm box slightly past where the curb ends, so that the water collects, and then that storm box lid itself is typically, at that point be 4 feet, because it's set back a little bit. I mean, some of them are different sizes, but that's pretty standard.
Thank you.
Can I add something too?
Yes.
Sure.
I think also what you're having trouble visualizing is because like in my neighborhood, we don't have sidewalks.
Right.
Right.
We have, there's culverts
Uh-huh.
instead of like the regular curbing so that you would have a sidewalk.
Yep.
So maybe like just being in town for so long.
Well, I know, I mean,
Because I couldn't.
Yeah, I
visualize
lived
a
for-
place Where the sidewalk is back, like in my residential area.
Well, yours would cut so far into your driveway
Right.
that you wouldn't have a driveway, yeah.
and I mean, I lived for a long time in a house,
Because we have.
yeah, that was built in 2000, and there was only this much,
Right.
there's only this much space between the sidewalk and the road, so I'm having a really hard time envisioning 5 feet. That's a long ways. I guess I need to go look at it. In Edgewood, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, or just drive down 21st Street in the
In
new
the
houses.
new part there. Okay, got it.
You'll
Thank
see those, you'll right away see they're 5 feet,
you. Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Okay. Moving right along. So just to kind of give you a summary of where we're at so far, on the 15th, the meeting there, of course, I presented the IBC, the IRC, and the IFC. On the 5th of August, we covered the remaining books that we're looking at adopting, and also looked at the fee schedule. After tonight's review of the proposed ordinance, the final draft of the ordinance to adopt, implement the proposed changes will go to the board for consideration September 3rd. With that reading, it'll start the required 90-day review period by state statute. And then, of course, the final reading to adopt during the board meeting on December 2nd, which would, again, satisfy that state requirement, 90 days. We're wanting to put this in action, in place for January 1 of 2025. So in between that, the 90-day review period, that's, of course, when, if you guys have any additional changes or whatever, the public can make their comments on it. Of course, the builders, I'm going to, of course, let them know that we're looking at changing things. They pretty much already know, but just to let them know that it's in motion, so they can come in and read them. We have to make those books available to the public. So we're actually I've got a set, and we're looking at we're going to buy a second set. That way, that folks can come in and if they request them, they can look through them. So, now, as far as what edits we have made so far, just to kind of go over, I'm not going to go over the whole blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to tell you the page number and what was wrong.
Okay,
So on page 10, it was just some punctuation that I changed with the building official designation, and then page 13, that's where I added the code about the ice and water barrier. The code actually it just points out that it's got to be 24 inches inside that exterior wall, but we added that also needs to be placed within 36 inches around any roof penetrations, just for, again, added protection, because the ice and water barrier literally just glues. I mean, you can't get it up. Once it's stuck to that plywood, that sheeting, it's not going to come up when they tear that roof off. So just for added protection around any penetrations like vents, plumbing, pipes, for ventilation there, chimneys. Maybe you've got some electrical, coming up through the roof, the mast. Those kind of things need a little extra protection. So whether they're down here in the 24 inches or up here on the top with the roof vents, we're going to ask them to start placing that ice and water around those penetrations. So, page 14, that's where I added cleaned it up and added the dumpster requirement, so that, they have to have some kind of a refuse bin at each build. I did also put in here that if they're building a house here, they can, as long as the container's big enough to use for both builds, that they could share. But either way, I mean, they've got to have something to put the trash in. So no more just throwing it on the ground. So that's probably going to be a little bit of a challenge the first.
But they don't have to have a dumpster or a bin or some type of structural thing for every lot, correct?
Well, they got to have something to put, whether it's a dumpster or their own. A lot of them make their own little refuse bin, so that way they can.
So we're going to require that every lot has to have some type of either built or purchased dumpster device?
Or share with the house.
Or
lot.
share with,
It's going
yeah.
to be rough.
Yeah.
That's a huge expense on the builder.
Yeah.
They can't use their garage?
No, they can use their garage.
Okay.
Yeah, it says that they can secure it inside.
Okay.
Oh, it does? Where did it say that at? Oh,
So
can
they've got a
ensure
choice.
inside
Yeah.
structure, okay.
They've
So
got a
it's-
choice.
If they choose to do that, then they won't be fined for not having a structure or
Right.
a dumpster outside?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
they've got an option,
Okay.
yeah. So,
Yeah, those can really add up.
oh, yes. And there was some concern, a lot of times that, like dumpsters, and they end up in the public right-of-way.
Yeah.
So I've put that in there to where they can't be stored in the public right-of-way. Materials, I see that all the time. They'll just dump their trusses in the street.
Yeah.
And so that's not going to be allowed. Let's see, page 27 was one that it had a typo in it. It said the code official. I changed that, of course, to the building official. 35, that's added the portable toilets and, of course, the dumpster or requirements. And then there was a little punctuation that I changed there. 36, page 36 was punctuation, no big deal there. And then page 42, again, that's on the residential side where I added the ice and water barrier has to go around the penetration, so. I hope that's all we have to do.
Where's the C of O? I just saw that, I just passed it.
Yeah, I did too.
What kind of verbiage did you land on the C of O?
Okay, so, is that page 35, number 14?
Okay. Ah,
No. What did I miss? Did I miss one? honestly don't remember changing anything about the
It
occupancy.
had to do with the conversation we had about sod and,
Oh,
correct,
okay.
you guys remember that? You recall that we talked about that?
Yeah, I think did we decide we were gonna change anything on that? Because remember, the whole conversation was basically,
The homeowner would have to end up
Yes.
paying, is that what we said, than just to leave it like it is?
yeah,
Because, I mean, it's the sod requirement, to where they can get the temporary, that's in chapter 405.
Right, but the C of O, you're just going to leave it the same?
Yeah, well, same as, so the proposed change would be that would be $100
Okay,
Charge for.
charge to get a TCO.
but if to get a TCO?
To get a TCO.
So the builder would have to pay for the TCO?
Yeah, so they pay
So
$100
the
for
C of O, if a homeowner needed that if they wanted to try to get it after they closed, unfortunately, they may have to pay for it.
Yeah, well, the CO would be free, so the CO.
Okay, CO's free,
yeah.
okay.
So the idea would be that
Good.
we're trying to encourage people to get the certificate of occupancy, and so that, there would be no charge for that. But if they come in and they want to do a TCO, that would be a separate $100 permit fee, because we have to process the TCO, see what's missing, and then we would issue, if they needed to, a temporary certificate of occupancy, but that would be reserved for landscaping and sod.
Only,
And they would need to put that into an escrow
right.
until they have put in the sod or the landscaping is required. But what has occurred now is that the builders that get a TCO, they then put money into escrow, they put in the sod or the landscaping, they then get their escrow back because they have completed the escrow requirement,
Uh-huh.
but then they're simply
Don't get the C of O.
not getting the CO. So now, if then a homeowner later on comes in and says, hey, I want to clean this up and get a CO, there'd be no charge for them to get the CO. We'd see that they've completed the landscaping as required and be issued a CO. One of the
Okay.
things that we've talked about is what we could require builders to provide as part of that escrow is not just that the sod and the landscaping is enough to release the escrow, but they also have to have a CO. So we're gonna look to see kind of how that would work with the escrow accounts, but that would be a condition of releasing the escrow, was that not only would they have to do the sod and the landscaping, but they also have to come in and get a full CO and before the escrow should be released.
Okay,
And then that would hold up their, several thousands of dollars that they have in an escrow account for sod or trees or landscaping.
right. And we don't, nothing else is an exception, right? Unless it's something crazy for weather, like if it was a piece of a concrete on the curb or something, right?
Right.
Or
And-
stone that was below freezing and couldn't go on or
Right,
something like
Justin
that.
may remember some of the odder
Odd,
ones. Typically,
yeah.
it's been sod, only
Stucco.
landscaping. Sometimes during COVID, if there was some minor thing
Yeah.
that supply, they just, they don't have this particular thing, or there's
Yeah.
not a downspout elbow because they're gone, and it's like, well,
Okay. But we list it out before we give them the TCO.
Right,
Okay,
right.
perfect. Thank you.
The other thing that was part of the conversation at the last meeting was working, doing construction on the weekends. So that's not actually in this chapter. That's in the noise ordinance. And so you're not allowed to do building, excavation, demolition, other, building activities, except for like 7 to 8 on Monday through Friday. So if that's something that the board wants to look at changing, that would be a different code, and that would be under the noise ordinance. And probably a simple change to that would be, instead of Monday through Friday, would be Monday through Sunday.
right.
That would open up the weekend. If you did similar hours, that would prevent nighttime hammering or early morning, saws that would maybe disrupt neighborhoods. But that would be a different code section that we could bring back at a later date.
Yeah, I'd like to look at that at a later date, I don't know about you guys, but.
Yeah, would city staff look into bringing back something for the board to review for that?
Yep. Yeah, and there's,
Great.
and there's a couple other, and it's in the water and sewer, Paul's code section, that relate, it speaks back to this code section, so there's a couple of other ordinances that may need to be slightly cleaned up based on this, and so we could kind of bring back those ordinances as well, and the noise ordinance.
I think so. Ladies?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Justin, whenever, like, say somebody gets a building permit 1st of December, it doesn't, when does it take effect? It won't take effect till, will they still be under the old code?
So we've kind of tossed that back and forth, because, I mean, obviously, it's gonna kind of be hard to
Yeah,
keep track of, so, you know, there's certain points, you know, in the build that, I mean, they could go to the 18. Now, the bad thing about it is you know, I'm sitting here looking at plans that may be, you know, they may be submitted with the 2012
right.
codes. So it's, you know,
Yeah,
it's gonna be one of those things where we're just gonna have to work through it.
okay.
You know, we're definitely gonna sit down and, you know, get, you know, some concrete, you know, answers as
Yeah.
far as that goes.
How to track it and
yeah.
figure out, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So when the builders review all of this, do they usually give feedback, or if they had concerns about something or a complaint, would we get notified of that so we could look, I mean, I'm sure you'll look into it, but just so we know, that's kind of what I meant earlier, not keeping track of every question that you guys get that you can solve, just more of the complaints, like, this is affecting me XYZ, or like, this is a big complaint, like, not just something you could show them, like, with an answer, more of a concern or complaint. That's what I would be interested in
Yeah.
knowing.
Yeah, we can certainly keep a collection if we get
I don't know if that happens often. but-
emails, or if they call in, we'll make note if, you know, because, I mean, the intent of this is that it's out for 90 days, so people can review it and also, you know, comment on it. And that comment may be, they would come to a meeting and make a comment, maybe an email to city staff, it might be a phone call to you all, I mean, that, you know, and then, of course, you guys can take that feedback and as part of your process, and, you know, the first reading, the tentative schedule here would be, the first reading would be, you know, in September, and then the second reading and adoption of the ordinance would be in December for a January effective date. So there's, you know, plenty of time for looking at potential changes. I think depending on what it might be, we'd have to get with legal on whether or not we would need to do another 90-day period if it's a pretty drastic change. But
I mean, the positive part is most builders are using 2018 right now.
So they're using it
We're-
anyways.
following it.
Most builders, well, yeah, most of them are.
This is not
We're-
near as dramatic a
It's,
change. as
it's
it
not,
looks.
we're not the first city that's moving to 2018. Most of the builders that are building in our community are using 2018. Some of them are using even newer than that. They have even stricter guidelines, so you probably won't get a lot of review, but you might, a little bit of kickback. But, yeah, I mean, good point, we need to, if there's somebody making questions, yeah.
I feel like those people would know more about this stuff
Yeah.
than I would, so I would take their opinions and just hear them out, yeah.
That's all I have.
That's it?
Unless you get-
Good job, Justin.
Yeah.
And then also, you're going to buy another set of books, but they're also available at Mid-Continent Library, correct?
That, or they're free online. I mean,
Free
you
online,
can-
yeah.
You can get a free view.
Just for some casual bedtime reading.
Yeah, I thought you guys would all want to check those out, yeah. Yeah, all the time, don't you? All right.
So we don't need action on that, right?
No, it's just a
Okay.
presentation.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, did any of you ladies have any more questions for Justin or city staff on that presentation? No, we're good? All right. The next item on the agenda is information reports. Matt? No more information. Justin, do I just skip over you guys? Okay. Mark?
No report, thank you, Mayor.
All right, Chief?
Well, I know I'm beating this dead horse, but last week's blood drive was
Yes.
canceled by the Red Cross and moved to this Friday. So this Friday from 11 to 3, we'll be here. Would love to get the sign back on there. We had 18 on there, and we only got 3 so far. Looking for donors.
I'll be there, because I couldn't come last time. You were sending me to the hose draggers, is what you called it, so I saved my blood for the police department, so. Do I sign up somewhere?
You don't have to, but you may go on the Red Cross site.
Okay,
and sign
I have the app. I'll just go on there. Perfect. Thank you. Chris?
No report.
All right. Kim? Scott?
Just a couple things. I'd like to thank everybody who helped with the tractor pull. In particular, it's our local scouts. If you're not familiar, they handle the parking, they stay overnight at Frick Park, and then they do the trash cleanup, and they did a fantastic job, so I'd like to thank them for that. In addition, last week, someone broke into the our parking area for where we keep the dump truck and stole the park's dump truck, and we got them on camera, but just to let you know, we are down a truck now, so,
Stole dump truck.
yep.
How do you do that?
Police report was made and all that was it's being processed, but, yeah. And they drove through barriers to get out, so.
Okay. Rachel?
No report.
All right. Sierra?
I'll be traveling internationally for a week and a half. If you happen to try to get a hold of me, it's kind of hard service.
Yeah,
So,
I bet that is, yeah.
yeah, I'll
Okay.
be in Asia, so.
Oh, wow.
I'll try to get back to you if you have a question, but it might be a little hard.
Very good.
and
You're
I'm in a
telling your,
different
you're
time
on camera,
zone.
you're telling
Yeah.
your constituents that right now, so, yeah. Tracy?
No report.
Pam?
No report.
All right. Justin, again, you did a great job. Thank you for your patience, and I know it's been a long road, but thank you for making it through it. All right, I'm looking for a motion for executive session. Please make sure you read all the numbers.
I make a motion that we move into executive session 610.0211 and 610.02112.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to executive session 610.021 and 12. Any discussion? If not, City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Sierra McMichael,
Yes.
Rachel Kilmer,
Yes.
Tracy Newcomer.
Yes.
We are adjourned to executive session.